Buried beneath the sands of time lies a civilization whose brilliance rivals the greatest empires of the ancient world, yet remains shrouded in mystery. Ancient Nubia, a kingdom stretching along the Nile's southern reaches, was once a powerhouse of culture, trade, and staggering architectural feats, yet its stories are often overshadowed by its famous neighbor, Egypt. But what if I told you that Nubia's legacy holds secrets even more enigmatic than the pyramids? Scattered across its desert landscapes are structures so puzzling, so deliberately hidden or ingeniously designed, that they challenge everything we thought we knew about ancient engineering and purpose. These aren't just ruins, they're riddles carved in stone waiting to be deciphered. Picture this: towering monuments aligned with celestial precision, underground chambers with no clear entrance, and massive fortresses that seemingly vanish into cliffs. Who built these wonders and why? Some were crafted with techniques so advanced they defy the era's known technology. Others were placed in locations so remote their very existence feels like a deliberate message to the future. And here's the chilling part: many of these sites were abandoned suddenly, as if their creators fled something or left clues for us to uncover. Today, we're embarking on a journey to unravel 30 of these unexplained structures, each with its own haunting story. From the haunted halls of long-lost temples to the eerie precision of megalithic observatories, we'll piece together the fragments of a civilization that dared to dream bigger than history remembers. This isn't just a tour of ancient sites, it's a detective story spanning thousands of years where every crumbling wall whispers a secret. So, are you ready to step into the shadows of Nubia's greatest mysteries? The answers might just rewrite history. Nestled in the arid plains of modern-day Sudan, the Great Enclosure of Musawwarat at es-Sufra rises from the desert like a ghostly puzzle box from another age. This sprawling complex, covering over 40,000 square meters, isn't just large, it's deliberately chaotic, a maze of corridors, courtyards, and chambers that twist and turn with no obvious logic. Unlike the clean lines of Egyptian temples or the symmetry of Roman forums, this place feels designed to confuse, and that's exactly what makes it one of Nubia's most tantalizing enigmas. Walk through its towering gateways and you're met with walls covered in carvings of elephants, animals that haven't roamed this region for millennia. Why? Some scholars believe this was a sacred training ground for elephant-mounted armies, a theory supported by ancient texts describing Nubian kings parading these beasts in battle. Others argue the carvings are symbolic, tied to a lost cult of the moon god Apedemak, whose temple sits nearby. But here's the twist: the enclosure's layout mirrors celestial patterns, with certain corridors aligning perfectly with the solstice sun. Was it a temple, a military base, or something even stranger? Then there's the architecture itself. The walls are built with a technique called bossage, huge stones left partially unfinished, their rough protrusions creating a jagged, almost defensive texture. No other Nubian site uses this method so extensively. Was it aesthetic, practical, or did those uneven surfaces serve a purpose we've yet to grasp? Even more perplexing are the ramps and platforms that lead nowhere, as if the builders changed their minds mid-construction or left in a hurry. Theories spiral from there. Some suggest the enclosure was a royal retreat, a place for kings to demonstrate their power through ritual hunts. Others point to its remote location, far from major cities, and propose it was a pilgrimage site where initiates underwent trials in its bewildering passages. But perhaps the most haunting idea is that it was never meant to be understood by outsiders. The Great Enclosure doesn't just defy explanation, it seems to guard its secrets with a kind of architectural defiance, as if whispering, "Decode me if you can." And that's the magic of Musawwarat es-Sufra. It refuses to fit neatly into any box we try to assign it. Every answer only leads to another question, another layer of mystery wrapped in sandstone and silence. What's certain is this: whoever built it wanted to leave a mark so enduring, so deliberately cryptic, that even 2,000 years later we're still staring at its walls and wondering. Shifting our gaze from the bewildering maze of Musawwarat at es-Sufra to the windswept ruins of Nokha, we encounter a structure that radiates both grandeur and mystery: the Temple of Apedemak. Dedicated to the lion-headed warrior god, this sandstone sanctuary is a masterpiece of Nubian artistry, where every wall tells a story of divine power and human devotion. Yet beneath its ornate facade lies a web of unanswered questions that have puzzled archaeologists for decades. Approach the temple's entrance and you're greeted by a towering relief of Apedemak himself, his mane intricately carved, his body adorned with symbols of kingship and conquest. Flanking him are rows of smaller figures bound prisoners and offering bearers a vivid tableau of Nubia's military might and spiritual fervor. But step inside and the narrative shifts. The inner walls are covered in scenes that blur the line between myth and history: gods presenting swords to rulers, rituals involving exotic animals, and celestial boats sailing across the ceiling. The precision of these carvings suggests a deeper purpose, as if the temple was designed not just for worship, but as a cosmic map or a royal proclamation in stone. Then there's the puzzle of the hidden chambers. Behind the main sanctuary, narrow passageways lead to rooms too small for public ceremonies, their walls unadorned but bearing strange marking scratches that resemble star charts or construction notes. Why were these spaces sealed off in antiquity? Some speculate they held sacred relics or secret texts. Others believe they were used for initiation rites where only the privileged few could enter. But the most tantalizing clue lies in the temple's sudden abandonment. Unlike other sites that show layers of gradual decay, Nokha's artifacts suggest a swift departure: ceremonial items left in place, doors blocked hastily as if the priests fled under duress. Was it a sandstorm, an invasion, or a religious upheaval that emptied this sacred space? The temple's alignment adds another layer of intrigue. Its central axis points directly toward the rising sun during the winter solstice, bathing the inner sanctum in golden light, a feature shared with distant sites like Karnak in Egypt. But here's the twist: local Nubian traditions had no known solar cult. This suggests either a borrowed architectural tradition or a lost aspect of Apedemak's worship, one that tied the lion god to the sun's journey. Perhaps the greatest enigma, though, is the temple's isolation. Nokha wasn't a major city or a trade hub. It stood alone in the desert, far from water sources or fertile land. Why build such a lavish monument here? Some argue it marked the edge of a sacred territory, a spiritual fortress guarding the frontier. Others propose it was a royal vanity project, a king's attempt to immortalize his piety in an unforgiving landscape. Standing in the temple's shadow today, you can't help but feel the weight of its silence. The carvings still whisper of processions and prayers, of a god who demanded devotion, and the people who vanished, leaving behind only stones and questions. The Temple of Apedemak doesn't just challenge our understanding of Nubian religion. It dares us to listen harder, to read between the lines of its artistry, and to wonder what truths still lie buried in its dust. The pyramids of Meroë stand as silent sentinels on the horizon, their sharp, steep silhouettes slicing through the desert sky like daggers of stone. While Egypt's pyramids are celebrated worldwide, these Nubian counterparts, over 200 of them, tell a story just as grand, yet far more enigmatic. Built by the rulers of the Kingdom of Kush, these monuments aren't mere imitations of their northern neighbors. They're a bold declaration of Nubian ingenuity, with designs and purposes all their own. What immediately strikes you is their dramatic slope. Unlike the gradual incline of Egypt's Great Pyramid, Meroë's pyramids rise at angles so sharp, nearly 70 degrees, they seem to defy gravity. This wasn't an aesthetic choice, it was structural genius. The steep pitch allowed builders to use smaller blocks, reducing the need for massive quarries and labor. But here's the catch: how did they maintain such precision without modern tools? The mortar between the stones contains traces of a unique binding agent, a recipe lost to time that kept these towering structures intact for centuries. Then there's the mystery of the tombs beneath. Nearly every pyramid at Meroë was plundered long before archaeologists arrived, their treasures scattered, their chambers emptied. Yet the few artifacts left behind, a shattered faience bead, a fragment of gold leaf, hint at burials dripping in opulence. One undisturbed tomb, discovered in the early 20th century, held a queen adorned with intricate jewelry, her sarcophagus inscribed with spells from a Nubian version of the Book of the Dead. But why were so many others looted so thoroughly? Some blame ancient treasure hunters, others whisper of ritualistic emptying, a deliberate erasure of royal lineage by rival dynasties. The pyramid's alignment adds another layer of intrigue. While Egypt's pyramids famously mirror constellations, Meroë's follow a pattern that still eludes experts. Clusters of pyramids face different cardinal directions, some aligned with solstice sunrises, others pointing toward long-vanished temples. Was this a celestial map, a political statement, or something deeper? The answer might lie in the ruins of the nearby city of Meroë, where temples dedicated to Nubian gods like Ammon and Isis suggest a spiritual purpose woven into every stone. But perhaps the most haunting question is why construction stopped so abruptly. After centuries of refinement, the pyramids suddenly grew smaller, then ceased entirely. Was it climate change, dwindling resources, or a shift in royal ideology? The final pyramids are rough, almost rushed, as if the builders knew their time was running out. Today, these monuments stand as a testament to a civilization that reached for the stars and left behind puzzles we're still piecing together. To walk among them is to feel the weight of their silence, a reminder that some secrets aren't given up easily. Rising like a jagged crown from the flat desert plains, Gebel Barkal isn't just a mountain, it's a sacred landmark wrapped in divine legend. For the ancient Nubians, this wasn't merely a geological formation. It was the dwelling place of gods, a cosmic axis where heaven and earth touched. At its base sprawls a sprawling complex of temples and pyramids, each stone whispering of a civilization that saw the divine in the very contours of the land. But what makes Gebel Barkal truly extraordinary isn't just its spiritual significance, it's the precision with which its structures align with the stars, a feat that defies simple explanation. The Great Temple of Ammon, the site's centerpiece, stands as a testament to this celestial choreography. Its central axis points directly toward the Nile's northern bend, while its inner sanctuary aligns with the rising sun during the winter solstice, flooding the chamber with light in a spectacle that would have stunned ancient worshippers. But here's the mystery: the temple's layout also mirrors the positions of key stars in the Orion constellation, a pattern echoed in distant sites like Giza. Was this intentional, a shared architectural language across civilizations, or something more enigmatic? Some scholars argue the mountain itself served as a natural observatory, its peak acting as a marker for lunar and solar events. Others point to local myths that describe Gebel Barkal as the throne of Ammon, who supposedly descended here to bless the kings of Kush. Then there's the mountain's most peculiar feature, the so-called Uraeus rock, a natural pinnacle resembling a rearing cobra. Ancient texts claim this was the moment the god Ammon manifested his power, marking the spot as holy. Carvings at the base depict rulers receiving crowns from deities, their legitimacy tied to this very site. But the rock's alignment is equally startling. It casts a shadow at sunset during the summer solstice that divides the mountain's face into perfect halves, a phenomenon too precise to dismiss as coincidence. Did the Nubians sculpt the surrounding temples to enhance this effect, or did they discover a sacred geometry already written into the landscape? Legends compound the intrigue. One tale speaks of a hidden chamber within the mountain where the god's voice could be heard in the wind. Another describes a secret tunnel system linking Gebel Barkal to distant temples, though no such passage has been found. Even the mountain's name hints at deeper secrets, pure mountain in the ancient tongue, a title reserved for places where the divine was believed to walk among mortals. Today, standing in the shadow of Gebel Barkal, you can't help but feel the weight of its unanswered questions. The temples, the alignments, the legends, all point to a people who saw their world as part of a grander cosmic order. But whether this mountain was a celestial clock, a divine beacon, or something beyond our understanding, one thing is clear: Gebel Barkal wasn't just built to impress. It was designed to speak, its stones a language we're still learning to decipher. Towering over the ruins of ancient Kerma like a silent giant, the western Deffufas defies easy explanation. This colossal mud-brick structure, standing nearly 60 feet tall after 4,000 years, is one of the oldest and most imposing monuments in Nubia, yet its true purpose remains one of archaeology's most stubborn mysteries. Unlike the ornate temples of Gebel Barkal or the pyramid fields of Meroë, the Deffufas offers no inscriptions, no vivid wall carvings, not even the faintest clue as to why it was built. It simply exists, a monumental question mark in baked earth. Approaching the structure today, you're struck by its sheer mass. The walls, some over 15 feet thick at the base, slope inward as they rise, creating a fortress-like silhouette against the desert sky. But was it actually a fortress? The lack of defensive features, no arrow slits, no strategic vantage points makes that theory shaky. Some argue it was a royal palace, yet excavations reveal no traces of the lavish furnishings you'd expect in a king's residence. Others propose it served as a temple, but where are the altars, the offering pits, the telltale signs of worship? The deeper you dig into the Deffufas' secrets, the more it feels like walking through a house with all the furniture removed. You can sense the importance of the space, but its original function eludes you. Then there's the enigma of its emptiness. Most ancient Nubian sites are rich with artifacts, pottery, shards, tools, fragments of daily life. The Deffufas, by contrast, is eerily clean. A handful of pottery vessels and a single ceremonial dagger constitute the entirety of its discovered treasures. This scarcity is so unusual that researchers have proposed wild theories. Was it deliberately stripped bare by invaders? Or did the builders themselves remove every trace of its use before abandoning it? The most haunting possibility is that the Deffufas was never meant to hold objects at all, that its power lay in its presence alone, a physical manifestation of authority or belief that required no material proof. The construction itself raises eyebrows. The bricks, made from Nile silt mixed with straw, show an almost obsessive uniformity in size and composition. Each layer was meticulously leveled, and the mortar between them contains traces of a binding agent that's still holding strong millennia later. This isn't just skilled craftsmanship, it's a labor of devotion. Add to that the structure's precise cardinal alignment, with its corners pointing squarely toward the four directions, and you start to wonder if the Deffufas was less a building and more a compass, a cosmological marker anchoring the city to the cosmos. Perhaps the most compelling clue lies beneath the surface. Recent ground-penetrating radar has revealed a network of chambers and passages hidden within the Deffufas' core, their entrances long since sealed. These aren't storage rooms or burial chambers, they're narrow, winding spaces with no apparent function. Some archaeologists speculate they were used for acoustic rituals, their echoing corridors amplifying chants or drumbeats. Others suggest they served as symbolic, underworld spaces for initiation rites. But until those chambers are fully excavated, we're left with only echoes of theories bouncing off walls that refuse to speak. Standing in the shadow of the Western Deffufas today, you can't help but feel the weight of its silence. This isn't just a building whose purpose we've forgotten. It's a structure that seems to have been designed to resist understanding. Whether palace, temple, or something beyond our modern categories, it challenges us to reconsider what monuments meant to the people who built them. sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't hidden beneath layers of sand, they're standing in plain sight, daring us to look harder. Just a short walk from the enigmatic western Deffufas, its counterpart, the eastern Deffufas, stands in stark contrast, not just in location but in design, atmosphere, and mystery. Where the western Deffufas looms in silent isolation, the eastern Deffufas is surrounded by the ruins of what was once a bustling religious complex, its walls echoing with the ghostly whispers of ancient ceremonies. This isn't just another mud-brick monolith, it's a window into Kerma's spiritual heartbeat, a place where the divine and the political may have intertwined in ways we're only beginning to grasp. From the outside, the eastern Deffufas shares the same robust, fortress-like appearance as its western twin, but step closer and the differences emerge. While the western Deffufas' interior is a maze of sealed chambers and puzzling voids, the eastern Deffufas' layout is deliberate, almost theatrical. A grand staircase leads to an elevated platform, flanked by what archaeologists believe were altars or offering tables. The walls, though weathered, still bear faint traces of painted reliefs, fragments of processions, deities with upraised arms, and scenes that hint at elaborate rituals. This wasn't a place meant to confuse, it was designed to impress, to awe visitors with the might of Kerma's gods and kings. The real intrigue lies in the artifacts found here, objects that tell a story of devotion and power. Unlike the western Deffufas' eerie emptiness, this site yielded treasures, fragments of inscribed stelae, shattered votive statues, and heaps of cattle bones, suggesting frequent sacrifices. One discovery, a ceremonial mace head carved with the image of a cobra goddess, points to a cult of rulership where kings may have been deified in life or death. But the most compelling clue, a network of subterranean tunnels connecting the eastern Deffufas to smaller shrines nearby, as if the entire complex was physically bound together in a sacred circuit. Was this the stage for coronations, oracle ceremonies, or grand public spectacles? Then there's the alignment puzzle. While the western Deffufas points rigidly to the cardinal directions, the eastern Deffufas' orientation skews slightly northeast, aligning with the rising sun during the winter solstice, a trait shared with distant temples like Gebel Barkal. This subtle tilt suggests a shared celestial language across Nubia's sacred sites, a deliberate nod to the cosmos in architecture. Yet here, the connection feels more intimate, more human. The eastern Deffufas doesn't just face the heavens, it seems to reach for them, as if bridging the gap between earth and the divine. Theories about its purpose diverge wildly. Some argue it was the high temple of a sun god, its stairs symbolizing the ascent to enlightenment. Others see it as a political tool, a place where rulers cemented their authority through public displays of piety. But the most provocative idea comes from the site's proximity to Kerma's royal cemetery. Perhaps the eastern Deffufas was a gateway between worlds where the living communed with the dead. The evidence, a series of burial mounds nearby, contain grave goods identical to those found in the temple, as if the dead were still participants in the rituals above. Standing between these two Deffufas today, you're struck by their duality. The western Deffufas, stoic and secretive, guards its purpose like a locked vault. The eastern Deffufas, vibrant even in ruin, invites you to imagine the smoke of offerings, the chant of priests, the weight of a crown being placed on a king's brow. Together, they embody Kerma's paradox, a civilization that could build monuments to endure millennia, yet left their meanings just out of reach. The eastern Deffufas doesn't just challenge us to solve its mysteries, it dares us to feel the pulse of the people who once walked its halls. And in that, it succeeds brilliantly. Amid the golden sands of Naga, where the sun scorches the earth and rain is a rare visitor, lies an engineering marvel that seems to defy the very logic of the desert, a sprawling network of reservoirs and channels so precisely designed, they turn barren land into a testament of human ingenuity. These aren't just pits in the ground, Their intricate hydraulic systems, their stone-lined basins and serpentine waterways whispering of a civilization that mastered water in a place where it was more precious than gold. But what makes these reservoirs truly extraordinary isn't just their existence, it's the way they challenge everything we thought we knew about Nubian technology. Take a closer look and the sophistication becomes undeniable. The main reservoir, a vast rectangular basin dug deep into the earth, is flanked by a series of smaller catchment tanks, each connected by narrow channels that funnel water with gravity's precision. The walls are coated with a waterproof plaster made from lime and crushed pottery, a technique far ahead of its time, ensuring not a drop seeped into the thirsty soil. But here's the puzzle. Most Nubian water systems relied on the Nile's predictable floods. Noga, however, lies miles from the river in a region where groundwater was nearly non-existent. So where did the water come from? The answer lies in the heavens. Ancient engineers designed these reservoirs to capture every fleeting drop of seasonal rainfall. The channels, angled just so, directed runoff from distant hills into the basins where it could be stored for months. Even more astonishing, sediment studies reveal layers of charcoal and sand, a primitive filtration system that kept the water clean. This wasn't just survival, it was a deliberate, almost scientific triumph over nature. Who were the minds behind this? Theories point to a blend of local knowledge and foreign influence, perhaps from Roman hydrologists who traded with Nubia. Yet no records mention such collaboration, leaving the reservoir's origins shrouded in mystery. Then there's the question of scale. The largest basin could hold over 200,000 gallons, enough to sustain a small city. But Noga was no metropolis, it was a religious and administrative outpost, a place of temples and elite residences. Why invest such labor here? Some argue the water fueled sacred rituals, filling pools for purification ceremonies. Others suggest it was a display of royal power, a king's way of proving he could tame the desert itself. The most compelling clue, though, lies in the reservoir's alignment. They mirror the layout of Noga's temples as if water and worship were inextricably linked. Walking the site today, you can still see the genius etched into the stone. The channels worn smooth by centuries of use, the basins shadowed by the ruins of a civilization that refused to be bound by the land's harshness. But the true marvel isn't just the engineering, it's the vision. These reservoirs weren't built out of desperation. They were a declaration, a way of saying, we belong here, and in their silent, stubborn defiance of the desert, they speak louder than any inscription ever could. Crouched at the edge of the desert, the Lion Temple of Noga commands attention not just for its imposing presence, but for the artistic rebellion etched into its very walls. This isn't just another Nubian shrine. It's a canvas where two ancient worlds collided, blending Egyptian precision with Nubian vitality in a style so distinct, it rewrites the narrative of cultural exchange. The moment you step inside, the fusion is unmistakable. Towering reliefs of the lion god Apedemak dominate the walls, his mane a masterpiece of intricate curls borrowed from Egyptian craftsmanship, yet his posture, one arm raised in a distinctly Nubian gesture of power, speaks of a local identity refusing to be overshadowed. Even the hieroglyphs here tell a dual story, traditional Egyptian symbols interwoven with Meroitic script, a language still only partially deciphered today. But why this sudden stylistic marriage? The temple's construction dates to the 1st century, a time when Nubian rulers were asserting their independence from Egypt, yet the art suggests not subjugation but selective borrowing. Look closer and the details betray a deeper agenda. Scenes of King Natakamoni and Queen Amanita smiting enemies echo classic Egyptian triumphal imagery, but the enemies' features are deliberately exaggerated, their foreignness underscored with a rawness absent from Nile Valley art. This wasn't mere imitation, it was propaganda, a way to proclaim Nubian supremacy while appropriating the visual language of their former rulers, the message. We can play your game and win. Then there's the temple's abrupt timeline, which defies explanation. Archaeological evidence suggests it was built in a single frenzied construction phase, its sandstone blocks cut and placed with uncharacteristic haste. Tool marks are rougher than at older sites, and some carvings appear unfinished, as if the artisans were racing against time. Even more puzzling is its abandonment. Unlike other Nubian temples that show layers of reuse, the Lion Temple's altars were found intact, offerings still in place, as if a final ceremony was interrupted mid-ritual. A layer of ash near the entrance hints at a sudden catastrophe, fire, invasion, but no evidence of widespread destruction exists elsewhere in Naga. The celestial alignments deepen the mystery. The temple's entrance frames the winter solstice sunrise, bathing the inner sanctum in light that illuminates Apedemak's face for precisely 17 minutes, a phenomenon mirrored at the Temple of Karnak. Yet Naga lacks any known solar cult. Was this a nod to diplomatic ties with Egypt, or did the Nubians reinterpret solar symbolism for their own gods? The answer might lie in the temple's most enigmatic feature, a hidden chamber behind the sanctuary, its walls covered in star charts that blend Egyptian astronomy with unrecognizable constellations. Some scholars argue these depict local Nubian star lore, long lost to history. Others whisper of celestial events, a comet, a supernova, that might have spurred the temple's rushed completion. Standing in the temple's shadow today, you're left with more questions than answers. The art declares a bold cultural synthesis, the architecture whispers of urgency, and the silence of its abandonment hangs heavy. Perhaps that's the point. The Lion Temple doesn't just celebrate a god, it immortalizes a moment when Nubia stared across the desert at its mighty neighbor and dared to say, "We too are worthy of stone and sky." And in leaving its mysteries unsolved, it ensures we never look away. Beneath the pyramid fields of el-kurru, where the kings of Kush once rested in splendor, lies a labyrinth that defies both time and understanding, a network of tunnels so deliberately hidden, so eerily untouched, that even modern archaeologists hesitate to call them fully explored. These aren't just burial shafts or drainage channels, they're subterranean passages carved with purpose, their walls smooth from careful craftsmanship, their routes twisting like veins beneath the earth. Some stretch for hundreds of feet, descending at angles that suggest urgency, while others terminate abruptly in chambers empty of artifacts but heavy with implication. Were these tunnels mere functional conduits for funeral processions, or something far more ominous, escape routes for the living, designed in anticipation of a threat we've yet to uncover? The scale of the engineering alone is staggering. Unlike the rough-hewn corridors found beneath Egyptian pyramids, these tunnels show signs of repeated use and maintenance. Soot marks on the ceilings hint at torches carried through the darkness, while grooves worn into the floors suggest something heavy, perhaps sarcophagi or ceremonial sleds, was dragged through them repeatedly. Yet the most perplexing feature is their asymmetry. While some branch logically toward known burial chambers, others veer off into dead ends or spiral downward to depths that modern equipment has yet to fully probe. One such tunnel, discovered in 2014, ends in a vertical shaft dropping nearly 30 feet, a plunge that would have required ropes or ladders, but for what purpose? No artifacts, no inscriptions, not even a scratch mark to hint at its function. Then there's the chilling evidence of deliberate concealment. Several tunnel entrances were found sealed not just with rubble, but with meticulously placed stones mirroring the surrounding walls, camouflaged so perfectly they fooled early excavators. Why go to such lengths to hide passages in a necropolis already guarded by tradition and taboo? Some scholars point to ancient texts describing underworld trials for deceased kings, suggesting these tunnels symbolize the perilous journey to the afterlife. Others cite darker legends, whispers of dynastic strife, of usurpers hunting royal heirs, of a civilization so paranoid about threats from within that they built secret highways beneath their own graves. The most compelling clue, though, lies in the tunnel's astronomical alignments. Using laser scans, researchers found that key passages align with the Northern Star as it would have appeared in the 8th century BCE, not as a navigation aid, but perhaps as a spiritual guide. This discovery raises haunting questions. Were these tunnels meant to mirror celestial pathways, their twists and turns mapping a cosmic journey? Or did they serve as observatories of sorts where priests tracked stars through hidden apertures we've yet to find? Today, the mysteries of el-kurru's tunnels remain stubbornly intact. Groundwater has flooded the deepest passages, and unstable chambers resist further exploration. But perhaps the greatest barrier isn't physical, it's the silence of the builders themselves. In a culture that meticulously recorded triumphs on temple walls, their choice to leave these tunnels unadorned feels deliberate, as if some truths were meant to stay buried. Standing at the edge of one such passage, you can almost hear the echo of sandaled feet retreating into darkness, carrying secrets we may never unravel. Rising from the western bank of the Nile like a sentinel frozen in time, the fortress of Buhan stands as one of ancient Nubia's most formidable and baffling monuments. Built during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, this sprawling stronghold wasn't just a military outpost. It was a statement in stone, a towering declaration of power meant to intimidate as much as protect. With walls 16 feet thick, battlements designed for archers, and a moat-like ditch fed by the Nile's waters, Buhan was virtually impregnable by ancient standards. Yet its greatest mystery isn't how it was defended, but why it was suddenly abandoned, its gates left open, its storerooms still stocked as if its garrison vanished overnight. Walking through Buhan's ruins today, you can still trace the genius of its design. The fortress was a city unto itself, complete with barracks, workshops, and even a temple to the god Horus. Its layout reveals meticulous planning, streets arranged in grid patterns, granaries positioned for easy defense, and a central command post with sightlines to every corner of the compound. But look closer, and the cracks in this martial facade appear. Beneath layers of later Egyptian renovations, archaeologists found evidence of fire-blackened walls and hastily repaired breaches, silent testaments to sieges the history books never recorded. Who attacked Buhan and why? Some point to Nubian kingdoms resisting Egyptian expansion, while others suggest internal revolts by disgruntled soldiers stationed too long in this scorching frontier. The abandonment is even more perplexing. Around 1650 BC, Buhan's occupants left behind everything: weapons, pottery, even half-eaten meals. No signs of battle, no mass graves, just an eerie stillness. The prevailing theory ties this to Egypt's Middle Kingdom collapse, when pharaonic authority crumbled and outposts were recalled. But artifacts tell a stranger story. Nubian pottery styles begin appearing in Buhan's final layers, suggesting not a retreat but a quiet takeover. Did Nubian forces slip in after the Egyptians left, or was there an unrecorded truce that handed the fortress over without a fight? Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in the fortress's dual identity. Beneath its militarized exterior, Buhan was a cultural crossroads. Egyptian hieroglyphs share wall space with Nubian rock art. Burial sites contain hybrid artifacts blending both traditions. This wasn't just a battleground, it was a melting pot where enemies became neighbors, then trading partners, then perhaps even allies. The fortress's true legacy might not be its walls, but the people who passed through them, leaving behind a puzzle that defies the simple labels of conqueror and conquered. Standing in Buhan's shadow today, you're left with a haunting truth. The greatest strongholds aren't always defeated by force. Sometimes they're undone by time, by shifting loyalties, by the quiet erosion of lines drawn in sand. Buhan doesn't just challenge our understanding of ancient warfare, it reminds us that even the mightiest stones can't outlast the tides of history. Just beyond the modern bustle of Kerma's marketplace, the ruins of Gebel emerge from the desert like fragments of a dream. This sprawling ceremonial complex, rediscovered only in the past 2 decades, isn't just another archaeological site. It's a challenge to our understanding of Nubian spirituality. At its heart lies a cluster of structures so unusual, they defy every architectural convention of the region. Perfect circles, their walls curved with a precision that feels almost alien in a land of angles and right angles. These aren't the temples or palaces we've come to expect from ancient Kush. There's something far more enigmatic, whispering of rituals lost to time. Walk among these circles today, and the first thing that strikes you is their sheer harmony. Unlike the rectangular halls of Egyptian-influenced temples, these spaces embrace the curve, their diameters matching celestial ratios found in sacred geometry across the ancient world. The largest, dubbed Circle A by archaeologists, spans over 90 feet across, its foundation stones fitted together without mortar, yet so tightly you couldn't slip a blade between them. But here's the mystery: no tools or blueprints have been found nearby, leaving experts to wonder how Bronze Age builders achieved such perfection with nothing but ropes and rudimentary levels. Some suggest these curves were traced using astronomical alignments, their shapes mirroring the path of the sun or the arc of certain constellations. Others point to fragments of broken drums found in the soil, hinting at ceremonies where architecture and music might have intertwined. The artifacts unearthed here deepen the intrigue. Unlike typical burial goods or temple offerings, ducky gel circles yielded objects that straddle the line between sacred and surreal. Bronze figurines of hybrid creatures, part lion, part bird, cluster near the central altars, their wings outstretched as if frozen mid-ritual. Nearby, pits filled with charred animal bones show signs of repeated fire ceremonies, yet the patterns don't match known Nubian sacrificial practices. Most baffling are the coal pots, small ceramic vessels filled with a dark, metallic powder that chemical analysis revealed to be a blend of magnetite and ground lapis lazuli. Was this some form of ceremonial makeup, or did it serve a purpose we've yet to fathom? Then there's the site's layered history, which reads like a palimpsest of spiritual reinvention. Beneath the circles, older structures align with the cardinal directions, their walls adorned with faded murals of processions led by figures wearing crescent moon headdresses, a motif unseen elsewhere in Nubia. Carbon dating suggests these buildings were deliberately buried before the circles were erected, as if the new rites demanded a literal foundation of forgetting. Later, during the Meroitic period, the circles were themselves partially dismantled, their stones repurposed for a temple to the god Apedemak. This cycle of construction and erasure paints ducky gel not as a static shrine, but as a living entity, its purpose evolving with each generation's understanding of the divine. Theories about the circles' function spiral from scholarly to speculative. Some argue they served as celestial calendars, their curves marking solstice sunrises. Others propose they were arenas for sacred dances or trance-induced rituals, their shapes amplifying sound or energy. The most compelling and controversial clue comes from nearby rock art depicting figures with elongated heads standing inside similar circles, their arms raised toward a disc adorned with radiating lines. Could ducky gel have been a stage for communion with the cosmos, a place where the boundary between earth and sky grew thin? Standing in the center of Circle A at dusk, as the desert wind hums through the stones, you can almost feel the weight of the unanswered questions pressing in. Ducky gel doesn't just resist explanation, it dares us to rethink the very nature of Nubian spirituality. These circles weren't built to conform to our ideas of worship. They were designed to transcend them, leaving behind not answers but an invitation to imagine. And in that, they succeed brilliantly. On the remote island of Tobo, where the Nile's waters split around jagged outcrops of rock, a silent congregation of giants stands frozen in time. These are the headless statues of Tobo, colossal figures carved from red sandstone, their bodies towering over the landscape, their features meticulously erased by hands unknown. Unlike the crisp, familiar profiles of Egyptian pharaohs or even the regal depictions of Nubian kings at Gebel Barkal, these statues refuse to reveal their identities. Their shoulders slope into smooth, empty stumps where heads once gazed across the river. Their torsos bear the scars of deliberate chiseling, as if someone sought not just to topple them but to obliterate their very memory. The scale alone is staggering. The largest statue rises over 20 feet, its feet still anchored to a base inscribed with symbols that defy translation, a script unlike any found elsewhere in Nubia. The craftsmanship is undeniable. Folds of linen robes cascade in minute detail, and clenched fists grip insignia that might have represented authority or divinity. But who do they depict? Kings, gods, or something in between? The absence of heads isn't accidental damage, it's systematic. Tool marks show the decapitations were performed with care, as if the act held ritual significance. Some theorize this was the work of invaders erasing a conquered culture's legacy, while others point to internal revolts where overthrown rulers were symbolically unmade. Yet the strangest clue lies in the statue's alignment. They face not toward the Nile or any known temple, but toward a cluster of distant hills where no ruins have been found, as if awaiting something or someone still hidden. Equally puzzling is the material's origin. The sandstone used doesn't match local quarries. It was hauled from at least 50 miles upstream, a logistical feat suggesting these figures were paramount to Tobo's identity. But why invest such effort in monuments destined for defacement? Digging deeper, archaeologists uncovered fragments of the missing heads not shattered, but buried intact in nearby pits, their features smoothed into anonymity. This wasn't just destruction, it was transformation, a deliberate act of reinvention. Were these statues killed to release their spirits, as some African traditions suggest? Or did they represent a dynasty so reviled that their memory had to be severed from the physical world? Theories abound, but perhaps the most haunting comes from the statue's shadows. At noon during the summer solstice, the headless figures cast no shadow at all, their forms blending seamlessly into the ground beneath them. To ancient observers, this might have symbolized deities dissolving into the earth or rulers becoming one with the land they governed. Or was it a warning, a reminder that even the mightiest could vanish without a trace? Standing among these silent sentinels today, you're left with more than just questions. The statues of Tobo aren't merely broken artifacts, they're a metaphor in stone, a testament to how easily history can be rewritten or erased. Their power lies not in what they reveal, but in what they force us to confront, the fragility of memory and the lengths we go to shape it. Basking in the harsh Nubian sunlight, the ruins of the Sun Temple at Meroë stand as a paradox, a monument meticulously aligned with the cosmos, yet shrouded in eerie silence when it comes to the people who once brought it to life. Unlike Egypt's sun temples, which overflow with hieroglyphs detailing daily rituals and priestly duties, Meroë's sacred space offers no inscriptions, no lists of offerings, not even the names of the gods it might have honored. What remains are the stones themselves, whispering their secrets through geometry and shadow. The temple's design is a masterpiece of celestial choreography. Its central axis aligns precisely with the rising sun during both solstices, a feature so exact that modern measurements confirm the alignment down to a fraction of a degree. During the summer solstice, dawn light floods through the eastern gateway, slicing down the main corridor to illuminate a shallow recess in the western wall, a niche that once likely held a cult statue or sacred symbol. In winter, the angle shifts, casting the same niche into dramatic relief with elongated shadows that seem to draw hieroglyphs on the walls where none were carved. This interplay of light and architecture wasn't accidental. It was a language, a way of marking time and divinity without words, but who spoke this language? The absence of records is deafening. While other Nubian temples teem with carvings of priests and processions, the Sun Temple's walls are curiously bare. Not a single depiction of a ceremonial feast, not one named high priest, not even a fragmentary prayer. This void has led to wild theories. Was the temple so sacred that its rites were never to be recorded? Or was it repurposed from an earlier, forgotten cult, its original meaning erased by later rulers? The few artifacts found nearby only deepen the mystery. A handful of broken solar discs, their surfaces etched with patterns resembling sunspots, and a cache of ostrich eggshells filled with red ochre, a substance often linked to rebirth rituals. Were these offerings, tools, or something more enigmatic? The temple's isolation adds another layer of intrigue. Nestled on the outskirts of Meroë's royal city, it lacks the usual annexes, no priestly quarters, no storerooms for offerings. Instead, it's flanked by a series of low, circular platforms that show signs of intense heat. Some scholars argue these were fire altars for solar sacrifices. Others point to traces of melted glass, suggesting a connection to metallurgy or even early experiments with lenses. The most compelling clue, however, lies underground. Recent ground-penetrating radar revealed a network of tunnels beneath the temple, their walls lined with sheets of mica, a mineral that reflects light and withstands extreme heat. Were these passages used to create dramatic light effects during ceremonies, or did they serve as symbolic roads for the sun god's nightly journey through the underworld? Standing in the temple's ruined courtyard today, you can almost feel the weight of its silence. This wasn't just a place of worship, it was a carefully calibrated instrument, a bridge between earth and sky. Yet for all its precision, the Sun Temple guards its human stories fiercely. Perhaps that's the point. In a land where kings carved their deeds into every surface, this temple's power lies in what it refuses to say, a reminder that some truths weren't meant for stone, but for the light itself to reveal. Hidden in the heart of Meroë's royal precinct, the so-called royal baths present a startling contradiction, a monument to indulgence in a land where water was more precious than gold. Step inside and you're greeted by a complex so advanced it rivals the grandeur of Roman bathhouses centuries before their time. But this wasn't just about luxury, it was a statement of power, a technological marvel that defied the desert itself. The engineering is nothing short of revolutionary. A network of terracotta pipes, some still intact, snakes beneath the floors, their joints sealed with a waterproof resin derived from acacia gum. These weren't mere channels, they were part of a gravity-fed system that drew water from wells over half a mile away, funneling it through settling tanks to filter out silt before it reached the bath. The main pool, lined with waterproof plaster mixed with crushed quartz, slopes gently to a central drain, a design that allowed for efficient cleaning and recirculation. But here's what truly astonishes. Residue analysis reveals traces of imported cedar oil and myrrh, suggesting the water was perfumed, perhaps for rituals or diplomatic receptions. In a region where every drop was rationed, this wasn't just opulence, it was a flex, a king's way of proclaiming, "We command even the elements." Yet the bath's purpose wasn't purely practical. The layout tells a different story. Unlike Roman baths segregated by class, Meroë's chambers are interconnected, their walls adorned with frescoes of river gods and lotus flowers, symbols tying the space to creation myths where water births the world. The largest chamber features a raised platform with steps leading into the pool, its edges carved with spirals mimicking the Nile's whirlpools. Was this where rulers performed ceremonial ablutions, merging politics with spirituality? Or was it a stage for public spectacles where the elite showcased their divinity by summoning water in the desert? The real enigma lies in the timing. The baths flourished during Meroë's peak, when the kingdom controlled trade routes rich in gold and ivory. But as the city declined, the system wasn't dismantled, it was revered. Later rulers repaired the pipes even as other monuments crumbled, and artifacts found in the drains include votive figurines of frogs, Nubian symbols of fertility. This suggests the baths transcended their function, becoming a sacred relic of the kingdom's golden age. Today, standing by the empty pools, you're left with a haunting question: why invest such ingenuity here of all places? Perhaps the answer is etched in the very bricks. In a land defined by scarcity, the royal baths weren't just a display of wealth. They were a defiance of nature, a testament to a civilization that refused to be defined by its limits. And in that defiance, they whispered a promise: even in the harshest sands, life could flourish. In the vast, windswept basin of Nabta Playa, a collection of weathered stones stands silent witness to a time long before pharaohs or pyramids, a time when the Sahara was not a desert but a savanna teeming with life. These megaliths, arranged in deliberate patterns across the cracked earth, aren't just random boulders. They're one of humanity's oldest known astronomical calendars, predating Stonehenge by over 1,000 years. What makes them extraordinary isn't just their age, but their connection to the very roots of Nubian civilization, hinting at a sophistication we're only beginning to comprehend. Look closely at the largest stone, a 5-ton slab dragged nearly a mile from its source and placed upright in the center of a complex arrangement. Surrounding it are smaller stones, some aligned in rows that stretch toward the horizon, others clustered in circles like cosmic waypoints. When researchers mapped these patterns, they uncovered something astonishing. The stones mirror the positions of key stars in the constellation Orion, precisely as they would have appeared during the summer solstice around 6,000 years ago. This wasn't just stargazing, it was a meticulously coded system for tracking time, predicting rains, and perhaps even guiding rituals tied to the rhythms of nature. But here's what truly defies expectation. Nabta Playa's builders weren't part of an urban society. They were nomadic cattle herders, people who followed the rains across what was then a grassy plain. How did they achieve such precision without permanent settlements or written language? The answer might lie beneath the stones themselves. Excavations revealed deep, water-filled pits beneath the megaliths, lined with the bones of sacrificed cattle animals central to these people's survival and spirituality. This suggests the calendar wasn't just a practical tool. It was sacred, a bridge between the earthly and the divine, where the movements of the heavens dictated when to move, when to pray, and when to honor the cycles of life and death. What's even more remarkable is how these ideas seem to echo later in Nubian culture. The solstice alignments at Nabta Playa find striking parallels in temples like Gebel Barkal, built thousands of years later. The emphasis on cattle, so vital to these early herders, resurfaces in Nubian art and religion, where cows symbolize fertility and cosmic order. It's as if Nabta Playa was a prototype, a blueprint for celestial worship that would shape a civilization still unborn. Then there's the global context. While Europe's megaliths were still millennia in the future, the people of Nabta Playa were carving their understanding of the universe into stone. Similar structures in Turkey's Göbekli Tepe or Peru's Caral might hint at a shared human impulse to map the skies, but none match Nabta's age or its seamless blend of utility and spirituality. Standing among these stones today, under the same stars they once charted, you're left with a humbling thought. Long before empires rose, before writing or wheels, there were people who looked up and saw not chaos but order. Nabta Playa doesn't just rewrite the timeline of astronomy, it whispers that Nubia's genius didn't emerge in isolation. It was forged under the open sky, in the quiet intelligence of those who first dared to read the heavens and left their mark where the desert now remembers. Beneath the sun-scorched sands of Sedenga, a team of archaeologists made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the world of Nubian studies. A series of underground chambers so carefully concealed they lay untouched for over 2,000 years. Unlike the grand pyramid tombs of Meroë or the temple crypts of Gebel Barkal, these rooms were built to evade notice, their entrances hidden beneath unassuming stone slabs that blended seamlessly with the desert floor. But what awaited inside wasn't just another royal burial, it was a time capsule of Nubia's most enigmatic queens, filled with artifacts that defy logic and whisper of rituals lost to history. The largest chamber, its walls lined with gold leaf, held the fragmented remains of a sarcophagus inscribed with a name that stunned researchers, Queen Amenhotep, one of Nubia's most powerful rulers. Yet this wasn't her known tomb, it was a second burial, a secret resting place packed with objects that contradicted everything we thought we knew about her reign. Among them, a life-sized sandstone head of the queen, her features deliberately shattered except for one intact eye, its iris inlaid with lapis lazuli so vivid it seemed to follow you across the room. Nearby, a cache of iron arrows rested alongside a bow, their metal still uncorroded, an impossibility given the region's climate, until chemists identified a preservative resin made from a plant now extinct in the area. Why hide these objects? Why the second burial? The answers might lie in the chamber's strangest feature, a false door carved into the western wall, its surface covered in symbols depicting a queen stepping through flames into a star-filled sky. But the real mystery lurked in the adjacent rooms. One contained a stack of 22 identical silver bowls, each filled with a blackened substance that testing revealed to be astonishingly petrified Nile silt mixed with powdered ebony. Another held a collection of hollow clay spheres, their interiors scorched, their exteriors incised with markings that match early Meroitic script but form no decipherable words. Then there was the final chamber, its ceiling painted with a mural of a serpent coiled around a solar disk, its body studded with tiny crystal fragments that, when illuminated, scatter light into patterns resembling constellations. Theories spiral. Some scholars argue these chambers were shadow tombs, designed to safeguard a queen's spirit during perilous times. Others point to the artifact's deliberate destruction, the shattered head, the burnt spheres, as evidence of a ritual to kill objects and release their spiritual essence. The most compelling clue, though, comes from the walls themselves. Infrared scanning revealed layers of paint beneath the visible murals, depicting earlier queens in poses of submission later painted over by figures standing triumphant. Was Sedenga a place of dynastic rebirth, where rulers came to symbolically overthrow their predecessors, or a vault for relics too dangerous to leave in the open? Standing in these chambers today, you're struck by their duality, grand yet hidden, lavish yet violent. They don't just hold treasures, they guard a narrative of power, fear, and reinvention written in gold and fire. And perhaps that's the point. In a land where queens wielded swords and gods walked in dreams, some truths were too potent to carve into temple walls. They had to be buried, waiting for the desert to decide when or if they'd ever see the light again. Somewhere along the Nile's sweeping bend, the lost city of Kawa sleeps beneath the sand, its crumbling walls holding stories that history forgot. Once a bustling hub of trade and worship, Kawa's grandeur rivaled that of Meroë and Napata, yet today its name barely whispers through the annals of archaeology. What makes this city so haunting isn't just its abandonment, but the eerie silence surrounding its zenith. Unlike other Nubian powerhouses, Kawa left behind no boastful inscriptions, no king lists chiseled into temple walls. It's as if its golden age was deliberately erased. The ruins themselves tell a contradictory tale. Excavations reveal a metropolis meticulously planned, with wide processional avenues leading to a towering temple complex dedicated to Amun, its inner sanctum lined with gold leaf still clinging to the stones. The craftsmanship is unmistakably Nubian, yet the layout mirrors Egyptian Thebes, suggesting a cultural fusion far more nuanced than mere imitation. But here's where the mystery deepens. The city's infrastructure hints at a population surge, expanded granaries, a labyrinthine water system, yet no records explain what drew people here. Was it a religious pilgrimage site, a strategic military outpost? The answer might lie in the temple's most baffling feature, a network of underground chambers filled with shattered statues, each decapitated with surgical precision. Then there's the puzzle of Kawa's decline. Unlike gradual collapses seen at other sites, Kawa's end reads like a single, catastrophic chapter. Storage jars were found still stacked in storerooms, their contents petrified by time. Workshops held half-finished sculptures, tools abandoned mid-stroke. Even the temple's altar bore traces of a final offering, a bowl of burnt incense never cleared away. No evidence of invasion, no signs of plague, just a city frozen in the act of living. Some scholars point to core samples from the Nile, which show a sudden drop in water levels around Kawa's fall. Could drought have driven its people away, or was there a spiritual crisis, a loss of faith in the gods who once blessed this place? The most tantalizing clue comes from an unexpected source, the stars. Kawa's main temple aligns not just with solstice sunrises, but with the heliacal rising of Sirius, the same celestial event that heralded the Nile's floods in Egypt. But in Kawa, the alignment is off by a fraction of a degree, as if the builders miscalculated or deliberately skewed the axis. Was this a silent protest against Egyptian influence? A nod to a forgotten local cosmology, the truth might remain buried, much like Kawa's greatest treasure, a cache of uncarved stelae found beneath the temple, blank slates waiting for stories that were never told. Standing in Kawa's ruins today, you're left with the unsettling sense of a city that chose its own obscurity. Its silence isn't an accident of time. It's a challenge, a dare to look beyond the grand narratives of history and listen for the echoes of those who built, worshipped, and vanished without leaving a trace. In a land where kings carved their deeds into stone, Kawa's greatest power might have been its refusal to be remembered. Amid the ruins of ancient Nubia, a silent revolution in engineering stands forgotten. The soaring stone arches of Karanog, a testament to a technology so advanced it would take Rome centuries to catch up. These aren't the simple post and lintel doorways found elsewhere in the ancient world. These are true arches, their curved silhouettes locking together with mathematical precision, distributing weight so efficiently they've endured 2,000 years of desert winds. What's baffling isn't just their existence in 2nd century Nubia, it's why this architectural genius vanished without a trace from later structures, as if the knowledge was snatched away by the sands of time. Walk beneath one of these arches today and you'll notice something startling. The keystones aren't just wedged into place, they're sculpted with interlocking grooves, a technique modern engineers call joggled voussoirs. Each stone grips its neighbor like puzzle pieces, creating a self-reinforcing system that laughs at gravity. The Romans wouldn't perfect this method for another 100 years, yet here in Nubia, it appears fully formed without the clumsy trial and error seen in early European attempts. Even more impressive, the mortar. Chemical analysis reveals a blend of lime and volcanic ash imported from Ethiopia, a recipe identical to Roman concrete, except Nubian builders used it centuries earlier. How did this knowledge cross continents, or did Nubia develop it independently? The ruins refuse to say. Then there's the mystery of their abrupt disappearance. After the fall of the Meroitic kingdom, Nubian architecture reverts to flat ceilings and crude corbelling, as if the arched mastery was deliberately abandoned. No gradual decline, no half-remembered imitations, just silence. Some scholars blame the shift to Christian Nubia, where Byzantine influences favored basilicas over vaults. Others point to economic collapse, arguing the arches required specialized labor and materials that became unaffordable. But the most haunting theory comes from the arches themselves. At Karanog, several were found deliberately destabilized, their keystones chiseled loose in a pattern suggesting ritual killing of the structures. Was this technology tied to pagan belief so deeply that converting to Christianity meant destroying it? Or did the arches symbolize a royal authority that new rulers needed to erase? The global context deepens the intrigue. Similar arches appear in pre-Islamic Yemen and Aksumite Ethiopia around the same period, hinting at a lost network of knowledge exchange across the Red Sea. Yet Nubia's versions are more refined, their curves calculated to precise geometric ratios found in later Gothic cathedrals. This wasn't just borrowed skill, it was a flowering of local genius. Standing in the shadow of these arches today, you're left with a gnawing question. Why does history remember Rome's arches but forget Nubia's? Perhaps because the true measure of a civilization isn't just what it builds, but what it chooses to preserve. These silent curves aren't just relics, they're a challenge to the narrative, proof that innovation's flame burned bright in lands we've too often overlooked. And in their abandonment, they whisper a warning: even the brightest knowledge can be extinguished if no one fights to keep it alive. Rising from the desert just north of Meroë, the jagged silhouette of Nubia's unfinished pyramid cuts a haunting figure against the skyline, a monument frozen in time. Unlike its polished neighbors, this structure was never capped with gleaming white limestone. Its rough masonry lies exposed, its summit abruptly flat, as if the builders dropped their tools and walked away. What halted construction so suddenly? The answer may lie not in war or famine, but in the shadows of a royal court unraveling from within. Clues emerge from the pyramid's very bones. The lower courses are impeccably crafted, their sandstone blocks fitted with the precision typical of Nubian engineers. But halfway up, the quality collapses: rushed masonry, uneven layers, and even recycled stones from older monuments hastily mortared into place. This wasn't mere laziness, it was desperation. Carbon dating of mortar samples reveals a startling timeline. Work stopped within weeks, coinciding with the death of a king named Amenhotep, whose name appears on foundation tablets. Yet no burial chamber was ever dug, no sarcophagus placed. The message is clear: this pyramid wasn't just unfinished, it was rejected, its intended occupant erased from history. But why? Scrolls recovered from nearby Napata hint at a power struggle so vicious it fractured the royal lineage. Amenhotep's successor, a shadowy figure named Tallakamani, left records boasting of purging the false lineage, while temple reliefs show artisans chiseling out the cartouches of previous rulers. The unfinished pyramid, then, becomes a physical manifestation of this turmoil, a king's legacy literally cut short. Even more telling are the worker camps surrounding the site. Unlike the organized quarters at completed pyramids, these are strewn with abandoned tools and half-eaten meals, as if laborers fled mid-shift. A single clay tablet found in the rubble bears a frantic message: the crown is disputed. The gods are silent, the architectural details whisper secrets too. The pyramid's base aligns perfectly with the winter solstice sunrise, a feature sacred to Nubian kingship. But its truncated height means the sunlight now stops short of the intended burial chamber, symbolizing a ruler who failed to complete his journey to the afterlife. Nearby, archaeologists uncovered a pit filled with smashed ceremonial objects, broken staves, a shattered crown likely ritually killed to negate their power. This wasn't mere succession, it was annihilation. Yet the greatest mystery lies in what happened next. Within a generation, Nubia's pyramid field was abandoned entirely. The royal necropolis moved to Meroë. The unfinished pyramid wasn't dismantled or repurposed. It was left as a stark warning, a skeletal reminder of ambition's fragility. To stand before it today is to witness a moment frozen in conflict, where stone and sand hold the echoes of a dynasty tearing itself apart. In its jagged silhouette, we see not just a failed tomb, but the price of power, and the lengths men will go to claim it. High on the cliffs of Gebel Barkal, where the Nile carves its path through golden sandstone, a gallery of cryptic symbols stares down at the modern world, etched in stone yet defiantly silent. These aren't the familiar hieroglyphs of Egypt or the cursive elegance of Meroitic script. They're a linguistic puzzle, a jumble of geometric shapes, animal silhouettes, and crescent-like forms that have resisted translation for centuries. Some cling to the rock face in neat rows, as if part of a formal proclamation. Others sprawl haphazardly, overlapping like layers of graffiti left by different hands across generations. But here's what chills the bones. These markings aren't random. Their repetition, their placement near strategic river bends, even the way certain symbols cluster near depictions of armed figures, all suggest a system of communication we've yet to crack. Theories about their origins span from scholarly to spine-tingling. A handful of symbols bear passing resemblance to early Proto-Sinaitic script, the ancestor of alphabets like Hebrew and Greek, hinting at a Bronze Age trade link stretching far beyond Nubia. Others echo Libyan desert scripts found 1,000 miles to the west, while a few stark, angular forms match nothing in the archaeological record, the most tantalizing clue. A recurring motif resembling a horned altar flanked by stick figure worshippers, their arms raised toward a zigzagging line that might represent water or lightning. Could this be a plea to forgotten gods, a warning to travelers, or even a territorial claim? Without a Rosetta Stone to bridge the gap, the inscriptions remain a locked door. Then there's the matter of their creators. Scattered among the symbols are crude carvings of long-horned cattle, their humped backs echoing the breed still herded by the Beja people of eastern Sudan. Linguists note eerie similarities between these motifs and the oral counting systems used by Beja elders today, raising the explosive possibility that Gebel Dosha's script isn't extinct at all, but the fossilized ancestor of a living tradition. Yet attempts to match the symbols to modern Beja words hit a wall. The few elders who recognize certain shapes insist they're not for outsiders to read, guarding their meaning with a solemnity that suggests ritual significance. Technology offers glimmers of hope. Recent 3D imaging revealed previously invisible strokes beneath the surface, proof that earlier carvings were erased and rewritten, a palimpsest of shifting messages. Spectral analysis even detected traces of pigment in the grooves, confirming the symbols were once painted vivid red, perhaps to catch the light of dawn. But the breakthrough came from an unexpected angle: astronomy. Several inscriptions align with the summer solstice sunset, their shadows elongating to point toward a nearby wadi where archaeologists recently uncovered a ceremonial platform. Was Gebel Dosha a sacred bulletin board, its messages activated by celestial events? Standing beneath these cliffs today, you're left with more than just curiosity. The inscriptions of Gebel Dosha aren't merely untranslated, they're a deliberate cipher, a challenge cast across millennia by people who chose stone as their parchment and silence as their shield. They remind us that language isn't just about what's said, but what's kept sacred. And until that code is broken, the cliffs will keep their secrets, whispering only to those who first knew how to listen. Scattered across the desolate plains of Lower Nubia, the stone circles of the Sea Group culture rise like ghostly echoes of a forgotten world. These enigmatic rings, built between 2400 and 1500 BCE, predate even the earliest Kerma kingdoms by centuries, yet their purpose remains as elusive as the people who placed them here. Unlike later Nubian monuments that shout their grandeur through towering pyramids or temple reliefs, these circles speak in whispers, their meaning encoded in the very simplicity of their form. Step inside one of these rings and you're immediately struck by their precision. Unlike haphazard piles of rubble, the stones are carefully selected, some waist-high, others no larger than a loaf of bread arranged in near-perfect concentric circles spanning up to 40 feet across. At the center of many lies a single, flat slab, its surface often pocked with shallow depressions that may have held offerings or libations. But what truly baffles archaeologists is their distribution. These circles cluster in barren areas far from settlements, their locations seemingly chosen not for practicality, but something far more profound. Theories about their function spiral in fascinating directions. Excavations beneath several circles revealed human remains, not the lavish burials of later Nubian elites, but simple interments accompanied by nothing more than a clay pot or a strand of cowrie shells. This suggests a funerary role, yet the sheer number of circles, over 200 documented so far, exceeds any plausible local population. Were they communal graves or perhaps memorials to ancestors whose bodies lay elsewhere? Then there's the celestial angle. Several alignments mirror the rising of Sirius, the star sacred to Isis, centuries before her cult reached Nubia. Others frame the winter solstice sunrise, their shadows stretching like fingers toward distant horizons. The most tantalizing puzzle, however, lies in their resemblance to distant megaliths. From the standing stones of Nabta to the cairn circles of Scotland, similar structures appear across continents separated by millennia. The C group circles share uncanny details with Europe's Bronze Age monuments. The use of white quartz stones, a material linked to rituals from Ireland to the Sahara. The presence of cup marks on central slabs, a motif found as far as India, and even the practice of arranging stones in counts that match lunar cycles. This isn't mere coincidence. It hints at a shared vocabulary of sacred geometry, one that may have traveled along ancient trade routes or sprung independently from a universal human impulse to mark the earth with cosmic patterns. Yet the C group circles hold mysteries all their own. At the site of Wadi Kabaniya, excavators uncovered a circle with stones alternating between red sandstone and gleaming white limestone, creating a striped effect visible only from above, a design choice with no known parallel. Nearby, another ring enclosed a pit filled with burned barley grains and the bones of juvenile gazelles, suggesting seasonal feasts or sacrifices tied to agricultural cycles. The most haunting discovery came from a circle near the Second Cataract, where ground-penetrating radar revealed a subterranean network of channels radiating outward like spokes, a feature that recalls later Nubian water cult sites, hinting at an unbroken thread of belief spanning thousands of years. Today, these silent rings challenge our assumptions about primitive societies. Built without metal tools or written language, they demonstrate an intuitive grasp of astronomy, community, and the sacred that rivals any cathedral or temple. Their creators left no inscriptions, no king lists, just stones and shadows waiting for us to read them. And in their patient silence, they ask a question that lingers in the desert air. What does it mean to build not for kings or conquest, but for the stars themselves? At the ruined city of Wad Ban Nokka, a series of columns stand as if frozen mid-air, their bases hovering inches above the ground with no visible support. These so-called floating columns aren't an illusion, they're a deliberate architectural marvel that has baffled engineers and archaeologists alike. Carved from solid sandstone, each column weighs several tons, yet they appear to balance effortlessly on slender pedestals, their edges so precisely cut that not even a blade of grass can slip between the stone and the earth. How did the Nubians achieve this gravity-defying feat? The answer may lie beneath the surface. Ground-penetrating radar scans reveal a hidden network of iron rods, some still remarkably intact, running vertically through the columns and anchoring them deep into bedrock. This isn't just early reinforcement, it's a sophisticated understanding of load distribution, predating similar techniques in medieval Europe by over 1,000 years. But why go to such lengths? Some researchers argue the columns were designed to withstand earthquakes, their flexible metal cores allowing subtle sway during tremors. Others point to the local geology. Wad Ban Nokka sits on unstable clay deposits that shift seasonally, meaning the columns needed to float to avoid cracking. The most compelling evidence, tool marks on the pedestals, show they were recessed by millimeters over time. Proof the Nubians intentionally calibrated the gap to accommodate natural settlement. Yet the engineering is only half the story. The column's symbolism runs as deep as their foundations. Each shaft is carved with alternating spirals and lotus motifs, patterns that mirror the movement of the Nile's currents. In Nubian cosmology, water wasn't just a resource, it was a sacred force bridging the earthly and divine. By making stone appear to float like a reed on the river, the builders may have been replicating a spiritual concept, the illusion of weightlessness as a path to enlightenment. This idea is reinforced by the columns' arrangement. They form a processional path leading to a temple of Amun, aligning so that at dawn during the summer solstice, their shadows merge into a single, unbroken line pointing toward the sanctuary's inner sanctum. The mystery deepens when examining the columns' abandonment. Unlike other Nubian sites where structures were repurposed, these columns were left untouched, their iron rods ritually bent upward as if releasing them from service. Nearby, excavators found deposits of mica dust, a mineral linked to Nubian star rituals scattered beneath the pedestals, suggesting a ceremonial decommissioning. Were these columns more than architectural triumphs? Did they serve as conduits for energy or worship, their floating state a literal and metaphorical suspension between worlds? Today, the columns stand as silent witnesses to a civilization that mastered both stone and metaphor. They challenge our assumptions about ancient technology while whispering of a world view where engineering and spirituality weren't separate disciplines but intertwined threads in the fabric of existence. To see them is to marvel not just at how they were built, but why a question that, much like the columns themselves, hovers just beyond our grasp. Beneath the murky waters of the Nile, where sunlight barely penetrates the silt, lie the ghostly remains of old Dongola, a once thriving medieval Nubian city now swallowed by the river's relentless embrace. Founded as the capital of the Christian kingdom of Meroë, this bustling hub of trade and faith stood for centuries, its brick churches and palaces towering over the desert landscape. But today, its grandest structures are submerged in eerie silence, their walls encrusted with river sediment, their doorways leading only to darkness. The story of how old Dongola met this fate isn't just a tale of natural disaster. It's a saga of shifting politics, environmental upheaval, and a cataclysm so sudden it left behind artifacts frozen in time. Divers exploring the ruins face a scene both haunting and mesmerizing. The Cathedral of Dongola, once the spiritual heart of the city, still stands beneath 20 feet of water. Its domed roof collapsed, but its apse remarkably intact. Inside, algae coats the remnants of frescoes depicting saints and kings, their colors blurred but still visible, a fleeting glimpse of the vibrant worship that once echoed here. Nearby, the heavy stone baptismal font remains bolted to the floor, too massive to be carried away when the waters rose. But it's the smaller, more intimate finds that truly send chills down the spine. A bronze censer, its chain still swaying with the current, a collection of lead seals stamped with crosses, likely used to authenticate royal decrees, and most haunting of all, a wooden child's toy half buried in the silt as if dropped in haste. What doomed this city? The conventional explanation points to the Nile's fickle nature, floods that gradually eroded the banks, forcing abandonment. But recent sediment studies tell a darker story. Core samples reveal a sudden, catastrophic inundation around the 14th century, coinciding with historical accounts of a massive dam collapse upstream. The Mercurian Chronicle, a fragmented manuscript recovered from a nearby monastery, describes a wall of water devouring the eastern quarters, suggesting a man-made catastrophe compounded by natural forces. Yet there's a twist. The city's northern districts, built on higher ground, show no signs of flooding. This wasn't a uniform disaster, it was a targeted erasure, leaving scholars to wonder if the dam's failure was accidental or sabotage during the kingdom's decline. The artifacts left behind deepen the intrigue. Among the submerged ruins, archaeologists found something utterly unexpected. A cache of iron shackles, their locks still clamped shut, resting near the ruins of a barracks. Were these relics of a slave trade, evidence of a prison uprising, or something even darker? Nearby, a stone slab bears a crudely carved Coptic inscription. The river judges what men conceal. The most chilling discovery, though, came from the palace cellar, a sealed amphora filled with gold dinars, its wax seal stamped with the crest of a king who, records show, vanished during the flood. Was this his failed attempt to safeguard treasure, or a sacrificial offering to appease the raging waters? Old Dongola's fate mirrors the broader collapse of Christian Nubia, a civilization squeezed between Islamic expansion and environmental stress. But the ruins themselves refuse to be mere victims of history. The submerged walls still stand at precise right angles, their mortar resisting the Nile's currents. The cathedral's foundation stones, cut with interlocking grooves, cling together with stubborn defiance. Even the river seems to acknowledge their resilience. During the dry season, when water levels drop, the tips of Dongola's tallest towers breach the surface like skeletal fingers, as if grasping for the world above. To dive these ruins is to witness time suspended. The artifacts aren't just relics, they're frozen moments of prayer interrupted, a game abandoned, a king's ransom never claimed. Old Dongola doesn't just challenge our understanding of medieval Nubia, it forces us to confront the fragility of human endeavors against nature's might. And in its silent, watery grave, it asks a question that lingers long after you surface. When the river comes for our cities, what will we leave behind? On the windswept shores of Sai Island, an anomaly rises from the sand, a sprawling network of stone walls so massive they dwarf the island's modest ruins. Stretching nearly half a mile in length and standing over 12 feet tall in places, these labyrinthine barriers form no defensive perimeter, enclose no settlement, and follow no logical military pattern. Their purpose seems to defy explanation until you consider the land itself. These aren't fortifications, they're a sacred compass carved into the earth with celestial precision. The wall's alignment is the first clue. Instead of facing obvious invasion routes, they snake inward toward the island's highest point, their curves mirroring the Nile's bend during the annual flood. At dawn on the summer solstice, sunlight slices through a deliberate gap in the masonry, casting a razor-thin beam onto a flat stone slab marked with petroglyphs of stars and waves. This isn't random, it's a hydrological calendar designed to predict the life-giving floods Nubian agriculture depended on, but the true revelation lies beneath. Ground-penetrating radar reveals the walls sit atop underground channels, their foundations laced with porous sandstone that resonates like a drum when struck. During excavations, archaeologists uncovered dozens of bronze rattles buried at intervals, suggesting the walls may have sung during rituals, their vibrations channeled through the earth to mimic the river's roar. Then there's the enigma of scale. The largest stones weigh up to 5 tons, yet Sai Island lacks quarries. Geological analysis traced the granite to a site over 60 miles upstream, meaning these monoliths were floated down the Nile on barges, a staggering investment for a structure with no obvious utility. Unless, of course, utility wasn't the point. Scattered along the walls are niches holding ritual objects, faience amulets of the hippopotamus goddess Taweret, clay vessels filled with Nile silt, and most haunting child-sized footprints pressed into mortar, as if ceremonies involved processions of the young. Theories about the wall's ultimate purpose spiral. Some scholars argue they formed a symbolic womb, with initiates passing through their corridors in rebirth rituals. Others note their resemblance to the meandering walls of Egyptian labyrinth temples, suggesting Sai was a pilgrimage site where Nubian spirituality fused with Nilotic cosmology. But the most compelling evidence comes from the stars. The wall's eastern terminus aligns with the heliacal rising of Sirius in the 15th century BCE, an event tied to New Year's festivals in both Egypt and Kush. Here, though, the alignment points not to a temple, but to a natural spring now buried under shifting dunes. Was this a place where water worship took literal form, where walls became conduits between the earthly and the divine? Standing in the shadow of these phantom walls today, you're struck by their duality. They dominate the landscape yet serve no obvious function. They're meticulously engineered yet devoid of inscriptions. Perhaps that's the lesson. in a civilization where kings built pyramids to shout their names across millennia, the walls of Sai Island whisper something subtler, that some sacred boundaries weren't meant to keep people out but to guide them through. And in their silent, winding paths, they challenge us to rethink not just Nubian spirituality, but the very nature of what a monument can be. Deep in the desert near El Hobogi, an eerie phenomenon haunts the ruins of a Nubian necropolis. The tombs here don't just hold the dead, they sing. Step inside one of these burial chambers, and even the faintest whisper reverberates into a chorus, your voice transformed into a ghostly echo that lingers for seconds longer than nature should allow. This isn't accidental acoustics, it's architectural sorcery, a deliberate manipulation of sound so precise, it feels like stepping into a conversation with the afterlife itself. The secret lies in the tomb's construction. Unlike the smooth, rectangular chambers of Egyptian pyramids, these spaces are oval, their walls subtly undulating like the surface of a drum. Archaeologists measuring the acoustics discovered something astonishing. The curvature matches the resonant frequency of the human voice, amplifying certain tones while dampening others. Even more startling are the niches carved at strategic intervals, their edges angled to scatter sound waves in patterns that mimic the rhythm of Nubian funeral chants recorded on temple walls. This wasn't just engineering, it was orchestration, a way to ensure the living could commune with the departed long after burial rites ended. But why go to such lengths? The answer might lie in the artifacts left behind. Among the grave goods, excavators found peculiar ceramic discs, their surfaces incised with spiral patterns. When struck, these discs produce tones that harmonize with the tomb's echoes, suggesting they were used like tuning forks to activate the chamber's acoustics during rituals. Nearby, fragments of inscribed bone reveal spells instructing mourners to speak 3 times toward the western wall, to summon a deceased ancestor's guidance. Combine this with the tomb's alignment, their entrances facing the setting sun, a symbol of the underworld in Nubian cosmology, and a chilling purpose emerges. These were not just tombs but portals where sound became a bridge between worlds. The most haunting evidence comes from a partially collapsed chamber dubbed Tomb 12. Here, the echoes behave differently, utter a single word, and the space responds with a delayed, distorted repetition, as if something unseen is answering from the shadows. Infrared scans revealed why. Hidden shafts branch off the main chamber, their lengths calculated to create specific echo delays. One shaft angles precisely toward a now dried-up subterranean spring, its empty channel acting as a natural amplifier. Another points to a cluster of buried stelae inscribed with pleas to the silent gods, perhaps an attempt to project prayers directly into the earth. Yet the true genius of El Hobogi's echo chambers lies in their impermanence. The tombs were designed to degrade. The sandstone blocks, porous by nature, slowly absorb moisture over centuries, subtly altering the acoustics until the echoes fade entirely. This wasn't neglect, it was intentional. Nubian texts describe the afterlife as a journey where the dead gradually dissolve into the cosmos, their voices thinning until they become one with the wind. The tombs, then, were sonic metaphors, their fading echoes mirroring the soul's ascent, a temporary tether meant to unravel when its work was done. Standing in these chambers today, you're left with more than just awe. The walls don't just echo your voice, they echo a philosophy, a belief that death wasn't an end but a transformation. And in their carefully crafted decay, they whisper a truth as old as sound itself, that even the loudest voices fade but resonance lingers. Beneath the shadow of Gebel Barkal, the ruins of Napata's granaries stretch across the desert like the skeleton of a gargantuan beast, row upon row of vaulted chambers, each capable of holding enough grain to feed thousands. Yet here's the puzzle. The scale of these storage facilities dwarfs the estimated population of ancient Napata by a staggering margin. If these silos were filled to capacity, they could have sustained the city for decades, not just seasons. So why build such excess? The answer may lie not in hunger, but in something far more profound. The granaries weren't just storing food, they were staging the ultimate act of faith. Walk through these ruins today and the precision is unnerving. The granary's walls, built from mud brick reinforced with crushed limestone, curve inward to create a natural cooling effect, preserving grain with an efficiency that rivals modern silos. Airflow channels snake between compartments, their design so advanced they wouldn't be out of place in a 19th century warehouse. But the real shock comes when you examine the distribution. These granaries aren't clustered near the city center or the Nile's fertile banks. They're positioned along processional routes leading to the Temple of Amun, their doors aligned to face the sunrise during the harvest festival. This wasn't logistics, it was theater. Artifacts found within confirm the suspicion. Instead of the expected traces of barley or wheat, archaeologists uncovered ritual offerings, ceramic vessels filled with charred dates, miniature gold sickles, and clay tablets inscribed with prayers to the Nile god Hapi. Even more telling are the granary's floors stained with traces of beer and oil, substances linked to Nubian libation rituals. The conclusion: these spaces doubled as ceremonial banks where the physical and spiritual harvests intertwined. Offerings of grain weren't just stockpiled, they were consecrated, transformed into a divine contract between kings and gods. Then there's the enigma of the false silos, chambers built with solid floors, incapable of holding grain at all. Their walls bear frescoes of overflowing baskets and dancing figures, their ceilings pierced with narrow shafts that cast dagger-thin beams of light onto altars during the solstices. Was this a symbolic surplus, a way to demonstrate abundance even in lean years, or a form of sacred deception, meant to convince both mortals and deities that the kingdom's prosperity was unshakable? The sheer ambition of these granaries whispers of a civilization obsessed with legacy. In a land where drought could topple dynasties, Napata's rulers didn't just prepare for famine, they weaponized abundance, turning storage into spectacle. To stand in these ruins is to witness the audacity of a people who believed that if you built big enough, even the gods would take notice, and perhaps they did. For centuries after Napata's fall, locals avoided looting the granaries as if the stones themselves still held the echo of a promise too potent to break. Rising from the sands like frozen flames, the mirror towers of Karanog defy every expectation of ancient architecture. These slender monoliths, some soaring over 30 feet tall, aren't just built from stone, they're carved from a single, flawless block of anorthosite, a rare mineral that occurs naturally as reflective as a blacksmith's polished steel. Under the Nubian sun, they blaze with such intensity that Bedouin travelers once mistook them for distant fires, weaving tales of jinn trapped in glass prisons. But these towers weren't meant to deceive. They were designed to communicate, flashing coded messages across the desert with a precision that still stuns modern engineers. The secret lies in their geometry. Each tower's surface is angled at precisely 52 degrees, a calculation that catches the morning sun at winter solstice and reflects it directly toward the temple complex at Turgis, 70 miles to the northeast. At noon during the equinoxes, the towers cast no shadow at all, their bases glowing with concentrated light that heats the surrounding sand to scorching temperatures, an effect that may have been used for purification rituals, as evidenced by the charred remains of ceremonial baskets found buried nearby. Even more astonishing is the tower's acoustic property. Strike one with a mallet, and it resonates at a frequency that matches the natural vibration of the nearby dunes, creating eerie harmonic drones that can be heard for miles. But who conceived such marvels? The towers bear no inscriptions, no royal cartouches, only subtle notches along their edges that recent laser scans revealed to be a sophisticated calendar system. Each groove corresponds to a celestial event, with deeper cuts marking the helical rising of Sirius, a star sacred to both Nubian and Egyptian cosmologies. Some scholars argue the towers served as a kind of stone telegraph. their reflections signaling festival dates or military movements. Others point to their alignment with underground water channels, suggesting they marked sacred oases in a region where water was divinity itself. The engineering alone boggles the mind. Anorthosite doesn't occur naturally within 500 miles of Karanog, meaning these multi-ton blocks were transported across the desert without the wheel or draft animals. Microscopic analysis of the stone shows tool marks from copper chisels, a metal too soft to normally work such hard rock, leading to the discovery that Nubian artisans used a now-lost abrasive paste made from crushed garnets and Nile silt. The tower's bases are even more ingenious. Instead of sinking into the ground, they rest on platforms of compacted clay and salt that self-level with seasonal rains, preventing tilt or collapse. Perhaps most haunting is their abandonment. Unlike other Nubian sites showing gradual decline, the mirror towers were deliberately decommissioned. Excavations revealed that each was carefully coated in a thin layer of reddish mud, neutralizing their reflectivity, while the surrounding plaza was strewn with broken mirrors of polished obsidian, a ritual blinding that echoes Nubian myths about the sun god's temporary defeat. Were these towers too powerful to leave active, too sacred for foreign conquerors to possess? Their final mystery lingers in the way they still catch the light at certain angles, as if waiting for someone to read their long-forgotten messages. To stand before these towers today is to witness ancient ingenuity at its most sublime. They're not merely monuments, but machine stone sentinels encoding the wisdom of a civilization that turned sunlight into language and rock into revelation. In their silent brilliance, they challenge us to reconsider not just what the ancients built, but how they thought, bridging the gap between earth and sky with nothing more than polished stone and celestial calculus. Rising from the banks of the Nile like a shadow given form, the Black Pyramid of Bellona cuts a stark figure against the desert sky. Unlike the gleaming limestone monuments of Egypt or the steep-sided pyramids of Meroë, this structure is stripped bare, no inscriptions, no reliefs, no trace of the artistry that typically adorned royal tombs. Its weathered sandstone blocks, darkened by centuries of wind and sand, seem to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it, earning it a name that whispers of mystery and menace. But what truly sets Bellona apart isn't just its austere appearance, it's the unsettling absence at its heart. For this is a pyramid without a pharaoh, a tomb that guards no king. Step inside the narrow passageway, and the air grows thick with the weight of unanswered questions. The burial chamber, though clearly designed for royalty, lies empty save for a shattered sarcophagus overturned in one corner. Scorch marks streak the walls, their patterns suggesting deliberate fire rather than accident, while the floor is littered with fragments of gold leaf, once part of a lavish funerary mask, now peeled away as if in haste. Egyptologists initially assumed grave robbers had plundered the site, but the evidence tells a stranger tale. The pyramid's hidden chambers, accessible only through a series of trapdoors, were found sealed from the inside, their contents meticulously arranged yet devoid of human remains. Who built this monument, and why was it abandoned before its intended occupant could claim it? Legends swirl around Bellona like desert winds. Local oral traditions speak of a cursed king, whose name was erased from history, his body denied burial in the sacred earth. 19th-century explorers reported hallucinations and sudden illnesses while excavating the site, blaming a black vapor that seeped from the pyramid's depths. Modern science offers a less supernatural explanation. Traces of arsenic and ergot fungus, both known to cause delirium, were found in the chamber's soil, likely byproducts of ancient embalming materials gone toxic. Yet even this rational theory can't explain the structure's most baffling feature, a network of copper wires embedded in the masonry, their ends fused as if by tremendous heat. Were these part of a forgotten funerary technology or evidence of a ritual meant to seal the tomb against something or someone? The pyramid's alignment deepens the intrigue. Unlike most Nubian pyramids which face the rising sun, Bellana's entrance points due west, the direction associated with death in Egyptian cosmology. More startling is its celestial connection. During the autumnal equinox, the setting sun casts a beam through the entrance corridor that strikes a polished obsidian disc embedded in the rear wall, creating a momentary flash of light. Similar discs have been found in temples dedicated to Osiris, the god of the underworld, suggesting Bellana may have been a gateway for the dead rather than a resting place. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in what wasn't found. In nearby pyramids, excavators uncovered shadow tombs, secondary chambers where rebels or disgraced royals were interred without ceremony. Bellana's shadow tomb, however, holds something different, a child-sized sandstone coffin, its interior lined with silver and filled with river pebbles instead of bones. Carved into its lid is a single word in Meroitic script, return. Was this a plea, a prophecy, or a warning? To stand before the Black Pyramid is to confront a riddle wrapped in stone. Its silence speaks louder than any inscription, its emptiness more telling than any treasure. Whether cursed or simply misunderstood, Bellana refuses to yield its secrets, challenging us to reconsider not just the history of Nubian royalty, but the very nature of how civilizations remember and forget their dead. Beneath the shifting sands of northern Sudan, the ruins of Pharos whisper a chilling tale of a city frozen in time. Once the glittering capital of the medieval Christian kingdom of Nubia, this ancient metropolis now lies half buried in the Nubian desert, its sandstone walls bleached by centuries of sun and wind. What makes Pharos so haunting isn't just its abandonment, it's the uncanny state of preservation, as if its inhabitants simply vanished mid-stride, leaving behind meals half-eaten, frescoes half-painted, and doors still swinging on their hinges. Step through the remnants of its grand cathedral, and you'll find colors so vivid on the surviving murals, saints with piercing eyes, angels with gilded wings, that they seem to have been painted yesterday. But the true mystery lies in the city's final hours. Unlike other abandoned sites that show gradual decline, Pharos's end came with terrifying swiftness. The clues are etched into the very stones. Excavations revealed layers of silt hugging the lower walls, evidence of a catastrophic Nile flood that breached the city's defenses. But here's the twist: mixed with the silt are charred timbers and melted glass, proof that fire raced through the streets in the flood's wake. Was this a natural disaster or something more sinister? A fragmentary chronicle recovered from a monk's cell describes the river's rage and the sky's answer, suggesting a perfect storm of flood and lightning. Yet the absence of human remains hints at something even stranger: an organized evacuation. Hidden beneath the bishop's palace, archaeologists uncovered a trove of church artifacts carefully wrapped in linens and sealed in clay jars, as if someone intended to return. Pharos's most haunting legacy is its art. The cathedral's frescoes, painstakingly relocated to museums, depict biblical scenes with a distinctly Nubian flair: dark-skinned Madonnas, local saints adorned with pharaonic ankhs. But one mural stops historians cold, a panel showing the Last Supper, where the faces of Judas and two other apostles were deliberately scratched away, their identities erased with violent precision. Was this an act of iconoclasm or a darker secret? Some scholars point to marginal graffiti in Old Nubian that reads, "He who betrays shall have no face in eternity." Then there's the puzzle of the missing bells. Pharos's cathedral tower once held 7 bronze bells, their tones said to echo across the desert for miles. Today, only their empty hooks remain. Local Bedouin legends speak of singing metal buried in the dunes, and recent ground-penetrating radar has detected large, bell-shaped voids deep beneath the sand. Were they hidden to save them from looters or from whatever calamity came calling? Standing in Pharos's ruins today, you're struck not by death but by suspension. The baker's oven still holds charred loaves, a scribe's pallet lies with dried inks and a half-written psalm. This isn't just a ghost city, it's a snapshot of apocalypse, a place where time itself seems to have drawn breath and held it. And in that silence, Faraz asks us the most unsettling question of all. What happens when the world ends, but no one stays to remember how? Perched high above the Nile's western bank, the ruins of Casa Ibrahim cling to their cliffside throne like a sentinel with secrets to keep. This isn't just another fortress, it's a time capsule of civilizations where Christian crosses are carved over pagan altars and Roman bricks rest beneath Meroitic columns. But what truly sets Casa Ibrahim apart isn't its layered history, it's the labyrinth beneath your feet. As you step through its crumbling gateways, the ground gives way to a dizzying network of tunnels, their walls scarred by centuries of chisels, their passages twisting into darkness with no apparent logic. This maze wasn't designed for defense or storage. It was built to confuse, to disorient, and perhaps to guard something deeper. The first clue lies in the fortress's dual identity. Originally a pharaonic stronghold, Casa Ibrahim became a center of Christian pilgrimage during the medieval era, its churches drawing worshippers from across Nubia. Yet beneath those churches, older sanctuaries lurk, hidden chambers dedicated to the lion god Apedemak, their walls still stained with ochre from long-forgotten sacrifices. The transition wasn't gradual, it was abrupt, almost violent. In one underground corridor, excavators found a cache of Christian manuscripts stuffed into a crevice, their pages pressed against a bronze statue of Isis, as if someone had tried to seal the pagan past away. But here's the twist: the manuscripts weren't damaged or defaced, they were carefully preserved, suggesting a reluctant coexistence between faiths that official histories never recorded. Then there are the sealed chambers, rooms bricked up so meticulously, their entrances blend seamlessly into the surrounding walls. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed at least 12 such spaces, their content still a mystery. One, located beneath the fortress's northern bastion, emits faint acoustic echoes when tapped, hinting at a void beyond. Another, near the old granary, radiates unexpected heat signatures despite no known geothermal activity in the region. The most tantalizing, a chamber sealed with a slab of black basalt, its surface incised with a symbol resembling a Meroitic ankh, but twisted into a shape that matches no known hieroglyph or script. Attempts to date the slab using thermoluminescence yielded bizarre results. The stone appears to have been heated to extreme temperatures multiple times over centuries, as if subjected to ritual reheating. Was this a doorway, an altar, or something more enigmatic? Local legends add fuel to the fire. Bedouin tales speak of a sleeping army beneath Casa Ibrahim, warriors turned to stone by a curse until their kingdom's hour of need. Early archaeologists dismissed this as folklore until they uncovered a row of life-sized clay figures in a side tunnel, their features deliberately blurred, their hands clasped around weapons of an unknown design. Worse yet, the figures aren't hollow, their cores contain bundles of desiccated organic material, possibly human hair or sinew, wrapped around copper amulets. Carbon dating places them squarely in the twilight of the Meroitic kingdom, a time of upheaval when such desperate rituals might have felt necessary. But perhaps the greatest mystery is Casa Ibrahim's resilience. While other Nubian strongholds fell to sand or sword, this fortress endured, not through military might but through adaptation. Its labyrinth isn't just a physical space, it's a metaphor for the city itself, where each era built upon the last without fully erasing what came before. To walk its passages is to feel the weight of that continuity, the unspoken pact between past and present, and in the silence of those sealed chambers, you can almost hear the whispers of those who still guard their secrets, waiting for the right hand to turn the key. From the celestial precision of Nabtoplaya's ancient calendar to the echoing chambers of El-Hobogi that still sing to the dead, Nubia's mysteries defy time and explanation. We've wandered through the labyrinthine Great Enclosure of Musawwarat, es-Sufra, stood in the shadow of the Black Pyramid of Bellona with its absent king, and trace the celestial alignments of Gebel Barkal's sacred mountain, each structure whispering a question that archaeology hasn't yet answered. The floating columns of Wad Ban Nokka, the submerged whispers of old Dongola, the mirror towers that turned sunlight into language, these aren't just ruins. They're fragments of a civilization that mastered engineering, artistry, and spirituality in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. What's striking isn't just the scale of these wonders, but how much remains hidden. For every pyramid at Meroë, there's a sealed chamber beneath Sedenga. For every deciphered inscription at the Temple of Apedemak, there's a script like Jebel Doshas that still guards its secrets. Nubia's deserts are vast, and beneath them lie cities like Kawa, abandoned mid-meal, mid-prayer waiting to rewrite history. The C-group stone circles, the hydraulic genius of Sai Island's walls, the granaries of Napata that fed both bodies and beliefs, they all point to a sophistication that rivaled Egypt, Rome, and beyond, yet flourished on its own terms. This isn't just a story of the past, it's an invitation. Every year, new technologies from ground-penetrating radar to AI-driven translation are cracking open doors sealed for millennia. Who knows what waits beneath the dunes, a library of Meroitic scrolls, a queen's tomb untouched by time, or perhaps an entirely new chapter in humanity's narrative waiting to shift our understanding of antiquity. If these mysteries have gripped you as they've gripped me, dig deeper, follow archaeologists in the field, support preservation efforts, and keep questioning, because Nubia's greatest gift isn't just what it's already shown us, but what it's still hiding. And if you crave more journeys into the forgotten corners of history, stay with us. The past is far from finished speaking.